Hello, Malcolm here, and welcome to Tuesday Teaching Tips. This is episode 314, and it's the last one in our current series about the Beatitudes and effective communication. Thinking about what it might mean if we were to preach and teach through the filter, through the lens, flavored by these amazing teachings, what are commonly known as the Beatitudes here in Matthew chapter 5 from verse 3 down to verse 10. What would it be like if we were to teach through that filter? What would the impact be on us as speakers and on our congregations? Well, today we wrap up our series. So if you haven't had a chance to look at the previous episodes, then you might want to do that. But today, before I get into the Beatitudes, I would like to give you a quote from that amazing person, Desmond Tutu. He said this about the Beatitudes: "The Beatitudes offer a transformative vision for humanity. They inspire us to be peacemakers, to hunger and thirst for righteousness, and to cultivate a deep sense of empathy and compassion for others." Now, don't you and I as preachers and teachers hope to convey some of this or to help people to grow in this? That we offer people not just a message or a lesson with some things in it, but a transformative vision, not just for the people there present, but for all the people they might have an impact on. That we want to inspire people to be peacemakers, to hunger and thirst for righteousness, and to cultivate in our congregations, in ourselves, and all the people around us, that deep sense of empathy and compassion for other people. Don't we want that? Well, I believe preaching and teaching with the Beatitudes more in mind will help us to have that kind of impact. So let me give you a couple of thoughts about preaching and teaching from the Beatitudes, or through the Beatitudes, I should say, as it pertains to preaching and teaching. Let's wrap it all up. So first thing is this: preaching through the filter of the Beatitudes should leave our listeners feeling blessed. Now, this might seem rather obvious. Blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who mourn, blessed are the meek, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, even those who are persecuted. If they are blessed when these things happen, then the preacher and teacher who's got this in mind in their heart and is informed by all this will leave their congregation and their hearers feeling blessed. That should be the experience. Certainly the Beatitudes are challenging, there's no denying that, but they are a blessing. Even those opposed because of living the Beatitudes out in Matthew chapter 5 verse 12 are told to rejoice and be glad. And why? And how is that even possible? It's because what else it says in verse 12, because great is your reward in heaven. So when we're persecuted, we are counted worthy. Have a look at Acts chapter 5 verse 41. Our faith is being purified, 1 Peter 1 verse 6 and following, and mostly because our reward is in the heavenlies, as Jesus says here, as he talks about in 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 14. Now, the reward, of course, is not earned by enduring the persecution, and none of the blessings come from the fact that we are sort of attempting to put it into practice. That's not quite the point. Our reward is by grace, just as much as everything to do with our relationship with God. But it means that we rejoice all the more because we're looking forward to something that we don't deserve, but that is promised. Moses looked forward to that reward, Hebrews 11:26. So should we. Colossians chapter 3, verses 1 and 2. Martin Luther King Jr. said this: "The Beatitudes remind us that the pursuit of happiness is not rooted in personal gain, but in a life of selflessness and service. They encourage us," this is the Beatitudes, "they encourage us to lift up the marginalized, care for the brokenhearted, and strive for justice." So your preaching and mine, our preaching and teaching, when infected by the Beatitudes, they will, if they're effective, that the preaching and teaching is effective, they will lead to the selfless service and the blessing of the weak. That's where it will go. And that's why we preach and teach, isn't it? And so doing so with the Beatitudes in mind can help with that. So that's our first thought in reflection here, is that the Beatitudes should leave our listeners feeling blessed, if you like, transformed, changed in a way that is Christ-like and a blessing to them and the people around them. But the second thought I have is this: preaching and teaching through the filter of the Beatitudes will, if done over a period of time, mature our congregation or the people we speak to regularly. The first four Beatitudes, poor in spirit, the mourning, those who are meek, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, they see the godly person on their knees in humility before God. And as a result, they're close to the heart of God. And therefore, of course, if they're close to the heart of God, if that's what they deeply want, they will be deeply changed by God. There's a lot of debate about how we help congregations mature, and there's a lot could be said on that. There's a lot of good wisdom out there. But at least part of it must be that we bring the Beatitudes in front of the congregation and we demonstrate the Beatitudes in front of the congregation every time we can. And part of that, if you're a preacher and a teacher, is when you stand up and what you say and how you say it. And we can help people to see the value of these Beatitudes and how important it is that we absorb them, that we value them, and that we want it to be who we are. These should be who we are, not just things to be done. And in doing that, we will demonstrate that humility before God, because that's the only way that these things work. And that will help our congregations to mature. They'll be deeply changed by God. And then the second set of Beatitudes, merciful, the pure in heart, the peacemakers, and those who are persecuted, these see the godly person as a citizen of the kingdom, transformed in relationships with the other members of the kingdom and those beyond its borders. There's sort of a bit of a shift to looking to others in the second half of the Beatitudes here. Now, these qualities that are talked about in the second part, mercy, pure in heart, peacemakers, and persecuted, these are often viewed as somewhat kind of soft qualities by the skeptical and the worldly minded, but they're anything but. Their practice is perhaps the toughest thing to which a man or woman can commit him or herself to. Christ-like character is built by living these Beatitudes, to live mercifully, to live pure in heart, to live as a peacemaker, and to live as the persecuted, but without bitterness. These are deeply challenging qualities for our hearts, for our character. So to live these, to really have them as to who we are, it means that we have to grow in Christ-likeness. And again, if we're preaching and teaching this, we're going to be helping people to have a vision for and an inspiration of being drawn towards being like this, because it's helping us to be Christ-like. And then we help one another with that in our congregational communities. Somebody said this about embracing the Beatitudes, which takes a heart and a mind change, is a repentance. I don't know how to pronounce this fellow's name, but I think it's Thelic, I think. As Thelic puts it, quoted it in another book, anybody who enters into fellowship with Jesus must undergo a transvaluation of values. A transvaluation of values. And in preaching and teaching the Beatitudes and through their lens, we're helping our congregations to see a different set of values to that in the world. And in some ways, we don't even have to tell our congregation what those values are that are different, but by living it and preaching it and teaching with that flavor, we are demonstrating it. As C.S. Lewis said, the Beatitudes challenge us to examine our priorities and embrace a counter-cultural way of living. They invite us to find joy and fulfillment by seeking God's kingdom above all else. How do we help our members stay focused on kingdom values and priorities? By preaching the Beatitudes, but also by preaching and teaching with them in the back of our minds, in our preparation, as we talked about in our previous classes, the way that we prepare ourselves to preach a text and to do it on the day. These things help the congregation to become so familiar with the Beatitudes in the teaching of them and in the demonstration of them that it becomes part of the culture. And isn't that what we need in our congregations? A culture of beatitudinous. That's not a real word, but you know what I mean. That flavor, that atmosphere, that culture is all about the Beatitudes. And part of it, a significant part of it, is how you and I preach and teach, understanding the significance of these commands and of the promises. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. If this is kingdom living, then it must be also kingdom preaching and kingdom teaching. Next week, we're going to move on from this series on the Beatitudes, but for today, I'd like to know what you think. How can you and I preach and teach in a way that's informed by the Beatitudes more effectively to help us grow as speakers and to help our congregations mature and grow themselves? What kinds of questions does this bring to your mind regarding preaching and teaching? Why not pray over the Beatitudes, asking God to reveal how they can flavor your speaking? And if God reveals anything to you, please drop me a line and add your comments on this week's topic. Leave them publicly, your comments, so that we can learn from each other, because we always learn best when we're learning in community. If you have any questions about the Bible, theological, technical, practical, send me your questions. You can email me, malcolm@malcolmcox.org, or you leave a comment on the website, malcolmcox.org. If you would like a copy of my free ebook on spiritual disciplines called How God Grows His People, then sign up for my newsletter at the website, malcolmcox.org, and you'll get that newsletter every week with an update on what I'm doing and what I've been posting online, and occasionally the odd extra blog article. If you know anybody that might benefit from this, please pass the link on, subscribe, hit that notification button, leave a review, why not? And I hope and pray until the next time that you find that this challenge and upward call, and I hope inspiration to preach and teach using the Beatitudes as your filter, as your bedrock, as your foundation, as what inspires you. I pray that it will increase your effectiveness to speak on behalf of God to whoever God brings to you. So until the next time, remember to keep calm and carry on teaching. Take care. God bless.